let's jump right into your experience, shall we?
All right, let's do it.
Now, Terry, when did this take place and the time?
Okay, it was July 13th. It was my mom's birthday, so she wanted to go shopping. So we go to Sears in Fort Pierce, Florida, and that's where it all happened.
Okay, so and I know this must be hard to talk about, but just what exactly did take place that day?
All right, so we get to the store. I wanted some fishing stuff, so I go back to the fishing department. Well, there's really was hardly anybody in the store, so it was pretty desolate to begin with. And I go back there. I'm looking at some fishing stuff. Well, this guy walks up, and right away I got this weird feeling about the whole thing, just because of the way he was acting. He was looking around. He wasn't particularly paying attention to me. He was just looking around, but he was standing right next to me. And so I got real nervous, and I started thinking, this guy's weird, something's up. And so I thought, well, if I talk to him, I'll feel better about it. And I believe one of us had a lure, and I think it was him. He picked something up, and he was just holding it in his hand. And I said, hey, what is that? What kind of lure is that? And he just kept looking around. He wouldn't acknowledge me. So it was then at that point, that's when it was over. And I kind of freaked out and took off running. And I ran to the middle of the store where they cash you out. And I was already crying at this time because he chased me around a little bit.
Oh.
And the creepy thing was, I was pointing at the guy, and he was looking at us through the suitcases, and you could see a portion of his face. So it was almost like he didn't really, he wasn't too concerned, you know what I mean? And I was, I was freaking out. I was like, that guy right there, and I'm pointing at him, I said, he's trying to get me. And so the cashier says, well, she said, is your mom? Oh, no, there was a lady standing there. I forget her name. She was there with her son, and she said, is your mom in the store? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, I'll take you to her. So she takes me to my mom, and my mom convinces me at this point that he was just a security guard. She's like, yeah, you're young. He was probably just making sure you weren't stealing. So, at that point, I kind of calmed down, and I thought, well, she might be right. He may have just been, making sure I wasn't stealing. So I believe she went to try on some shoes or some other clothes or something, and I kind of snuck off and went back to get my fishing stuff. Well, when I got back there, here he comes again.
Oh,
yeah. So then my heart, I started, I was already freaking out. The minute I seen him and he started chasing me, because this happened real quick. When I seen him and he seen me, it was kind of on right then again. And I took off running. And I believe some of the story here could be a little bit, I'm not 100% sure about because, talking to my mom, there's a couple slight differences, in the story. But anyway, I believe, back to the same lady because there wasn't very many people in the store. So I run up to her, and he apparently was not far behind me. And so, because from what I gather, what I believe she said was that he kind of just turned around and walked away. Not, kind of fast walk, didn't run. He just turned around and just went on his way. And so they called my mom, and this was a big scene over there, a bunch of people that was all of the workers and stuff. Everybody started coming around, and, it was a really kind of, chaotic scene at the time. Because at this point, everybody was pretty sure the guy was trying to get me. At least, we thought so anyway. And so then my mom, we're getting ready to leave, and she said, well, if we see him, I'll go up to him and ask him, is he security? What was he doing, chasing me around? So just as it happens, we're leaving the store, and I look over, and guess what I see? I see him, and I'm like, well, there he is. So my mom's like, all right, well, I'll go talk to him. So she goes up to talk to him. He turns around and looks at her, and I guess, according to her, it was like the creepiest look she'd ever had in her life. So apparently just by him looking at her scared her enough that she didn't want to talk to him.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it was, he must have been real creepy. From what I gather, the people that have been around him said he puts off weird vibes anyway. So, but he looked at her real creepy, and And so that was that. I went home that night, and I was so worried all night. It's amazing looking back as a 10-year-old kid. I thought this guy followed me home and, was going to come get me and all this.
Jeez. I can't even imagine going through that. That is just so scary.
Terrifying.
Oh.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I mean, I was really, really shook up over the whole deal. Like I said, I don't even think I fell asleep until like early that morning because I stayed up all night waiting for this guy to come get me.
Oh my God.
That day, my friend called me. He says, "Hey, you were on the news last night. The police want to talk to you about what happened last night." So I called them up and I told them everything that happened, but they really at that point couldn't do anything to the guy because he never touched me. He never got his hands on me. So there wasn't really much they could do.
Oh.
So, they got dismissed, and I think because of the security guard thing kind of got brought up, that was sort of how it got dismissed. None of us were ever called together, though, in a room with the supposed security guard. It would have been so easy to settle it right then and there, I mean, if the guy worked there, we could have got together and said, yeah, that's the guy. He was definitely, security. But there's no way that guy was security looking back now.
Right.
I mean, security don't walk up to you to watch you steal. I mean, they hide and watch you steal, I mean, he was like a foot away from me. So, he wasn't security in the end. We, kind of put that together, but it was never, ever cleared up officially. Yeah, I think it's just kind of at that point let it go because, he never did touch me and there just really wasn't anything they could do anyway.
Oh, geez. Well, it could have totally been a different outcome. And I'm glad it wasn't. But man, you see the things that he did to these other people, but we'll get into that in a second. So, Terry, how did it come about you identifying the man who tried abducting you? And what went through your mind when you found out just who this person was?
Okay, well, so the interesting thing was about the whole story, later on in life, when Jeffrey Dahmer got busted, I looked at my mommy and he just gave me goosebumps just when I see his picture. I was like, man, that really looks like the guy that tried to get me. Well, my mom, she agreed. She's like, yeah, I mean, she said, wow, it really looks like him. And at that point, we just laughed about it, obviously. It was Jeffrey Dahmer, and we thought there's no way really that it was Jeffrey Dahmer, so we just kind of let it go. Well, I want to say a couple years later, I don't remember the exact dates because this has been a long time ago, but I believe it was Willis called me out of the blue and, started asking me about my story. And I told him the whole thing all the way up to that point, that I thought it was Jeffrey Dahmer. And then he came at me with all the facts. At that time, I didn't even know Jeffrey Dahmer had been in Florida. So that was another reason why I just kind of figured it's not him. He was like, I think in Indiana or something. I don't really remember where he got arrested at for the first time or whatever, where he got arrested. But it wasn't Florida.
Right.
So I didn't know that he actually was in Florida. And then once he told me all the facts, I mean, it all came together pretty quick at that point. But I was already a grown man and I had already way been over the situation. The trauma for me didn't really last, too awful long. I think I got over it fairly quick after that, But now when I relive the story, it's, like I said, I've told the story a few times and it gives me goosebumps because I realize how close I could have been to, not being here.
Oh, absolutely. My heart goes out to all of you guys, the Walshes and you and your sister and Mia and Willis and everybody who had an encounter with this monster. I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer, I think he'll forever be known as one of the most notorious serial killers and cannibals of all time. I mean, if you look at his sheet, I mean, he is responsible for at least the rape, murder, and dismemberment of 17 men and boys starting from 1978, if not earlier. I can't imagine coming, you see things like this on TV, these monsters, and you're like, wow, that is terrifying. Even though this person's on TV and you're nowhere close to him, I can't imagine being just a few feet away and being chased by this person. It's mind blowing to me. So, how has this incident changed your life, if it has?
Well, it really hasn't. Like I said, because, because of, he really never got me. The trauma kind of just stayed with me, just shortly after. I think I was a young kid and he didn't really get a hold of me, and I wasn't aware that at the time, he was, one of the world's most famous notorious serial killers, And so I didn't put all that together until way later. So I think that is what saved me from being like, permanently possibly damaged from something like that.
Right. Well,
and then I found out 2 weeks later, Adam Walsh ends up missing from a Sears, 40 minutes away or so from where I was. So, I mean, to put it all together, it's just, it's an amazingly scary and interesting story.
Yeah, it really is. Mia, she showed me a picture, and it's actually in my promo, of her brother when he was younger when this took place. And besides the long hair, he was a really cute kid. He looked there were some similarities between him and Adam Walsh. And it just, again, just mind-blowing to me that all this happened in so many different accounts, and how so many people experienced this, and yet he was never, charged.
Pinpointed, yeah.
And now he's dead, unfortunately. I mean, dying in 94, I believe. And that's a bummer. I mean, it's too bad he didn't live to long enough, at least, to be rightfully charged, instead of throwing a bogus charge at Otis Toole, who was guilty for many things, but that wasn't one of them,
Yeah, it is truly amazing, and it would be nice to, even for the Walshes, to at least, put the person who did it, at least, maybe they could let that part go, but not knowing and all that, and, with all the work that Willis has done, I mean, he's done an amazing job putting together all the evidence. I mean, you probably can't get no more evidence. He's been working on this, apparently, for a long time, 30-something years. He's been putting all this information together. I mean, he's really tracked it down. I mean, you can't do any better detective work than what he's done. I mean, he's pretty much, with what I know that he's done, it makes it, to me, I mean, we're at a 99% sure that it was Jeffrey Dahmer.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's done so much work. There was so many witnesses. Eyewitnesses, older people that have identified him, not just a 10-year-old kid, but, there's been adults. There's, I guess, like over 12 witnesses that seen him in the Sears. So, with all the stuff that he's done, it's pretty much, like I said, proven that it was Dahmer, but we can't 100% verify, which is, it is sad.
Yeah, that it really is sad. But like you said, Willis has been working on this since day one, basically, ever since the Hollywood department and Detective Matthews kind of, turned their backs on him. And so I'm 35, giving away my age, obviously. But so this was 36 years ago. And just kudos to him and to you guys, too, to you and me and other people who share your story, your eerie experiences, to let it be known what exactly happened. Because if you look at Otis Toole and you look at Jeffrey Dahmer, it's night and day. They're completely different people. I mean, the age difference and just looking at them, clearly it's not like, oh, you guys could be brothers. It's like, no, I didn't see this person. I saw this person.
Right. And then even with the eyewitnesses that have, they've done some of the witness sketches were so amazingly close to Dahmer. I mean, the lady who actually took me to my mom, I think she did a drawing with an artist, and you put it up to Dahmer, and I mean, man, it's close. I mean, it's amazing. So, I mean, just with all the information out there and that Willis has put together, it's there's no doubt in my mind at this point. I mean, I'm convinced.
Right. Absolutely. And Terry, so like I said, Mia was on just before you, and her brother was yet another interest in Dahmer's eyes, and she talked about a blue van. Did you happen to see this notorious blue van as well? And if so, can you describe it to me? And I know you were 10 years old, which you were very young, but what can you remember about this van?
Okay, so the van part is a little sketchy because, I was 10 and it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is I do remember a little bit about the van. At least I thought I did, and I don't know, compared to the evidence, how close I do remember the van, but the things I remember were, now I don't necessarily remember being in the fire lane, but it may have been parked, I've heard it was parked in the fire lane. The reason I say that is because it did stand out. So there was something that made the van stand out. And it's weird because when we were leaving the store, I thought, and I don't even know why, but I thought, man, that's his van. It was weird, and I don't know how I put those two together. And it could have been because it was parked alone, in the fire lane that made me think all this. And it was, honestly, it just looked a little creepy. The van looked kind of ragged out, and it was blue, and it's, from what I can remember, I think it had a ladder on the back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so that's pretty much all I remember about the van, that I just somehow in my mind connected those two together, and I thought this is it just looked like kind of a junky van with a ladder on the back. That's about all I can really remember about the van.
Wow. Yeah, and so that van, so many people have seen this van, and one witness even, and Willis will talk more about this in more detail, but one person even saw this van, I believe, on a bridge, and with the pail with something around in it, and threw it over the bridge, and it's believed that was the head of Adam Walsh. And again, just this whole incident, people will always remember this. And like I said, I wasn't born when this happened. I was born the next year. But I just, just this little kid, and I don't know, he should have been able to live a life and live a childhood.
What a sad story. I mean, it really, it's horrible. I mean, it's just a horrible thing. And yeah, that van, I heard the same story, about the van, and somebody seen him with a bucket, apparently, throwing something in the water. So, just horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I met John Walsh. I was probably 17 at the time, and I met him in my hometown in Pueblo, Colorado, which I'm actually at right now. And I got to hang out with him and talk to him. Being a kid or a teenager, I just really wasn't nervous to walk up to him, and other people weren't really approaching him. And I walked right up to him and shook his hand and, gave him a hug, and we talked a little. And then he came on stage to talk about Adam and other things and safety and whatever. And I was sitting in the very front row, and I was taking pictures of him, and he paused and he looked at me and smiled, and I took a picture of him. But just such a nice guy. And no parent, I don't have kids, but no parent should ever have to go through that stuff, And I was talking to Mia, and she said that it changed her life to the fact that she became more of a strict mother. And she was so paranoid, really, to leave her children alone that unless they were in school, she always had eyes on them,
Yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
When this all happened, it's not like the media of today, so a lot of the bad things that were happening, weren't really known because, it wasn't like it's on the news and on Facebook and everywhere like it is now. So, back then, something like that was, when it made the news was a major thing because, it wasn't really known about. So I think like my mom, for example, she didn't hear that kids were getting abducted every day. So yeah, she did let her 10-year-old son go, I was an independent kid anyway. I kind of always did my own thing, but she was, a lot more laid back, I think, than parents should be, for one, and especially today, because, there's a lot of Dahmers out there now, and, it's dangerous. So I could easily see an event like this, being so close to you, really affecting the way you raise your own kids.
Yeah,
I mean, I
that's
don't have any kids, but if I did,
right.
I would be probably one of those over paranoid parents, that don't let their kid get too far out of sight, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm right there in that same boat. No kids, but I would probably be that too. I mean, and it's it's just terrifying. And you said it just perfectly. There's so many Jeffrey Dahmers out there today. And it's true. It really is. And it's like, and some of those people, they see the attention. Like this happened, a long time ago, and Jeffrey Dahmer is still very well known. And it's like some of these people are so sick and twisted that they want to be known, but instead of doing good in the world and helping people and doing whatever, to be a better citizen and to help, they do these horrible things. And it's like, I'd rather be known as nothing and nobody than to be known as this person who raped, murdered, and dismembered and abducted. And to this day, that's still my worst fear: abduction. It's the scariest. I just can't even imagine whether it's an attempted abduction like yourself and Joel and several others, but I'm sure it's a lot higher of a count than not only because one is a lot, but 17 victims. I'm sure there's so many more.
Oh yeah, and there could be that. What we don't know about. This is what we do know about. What we don't know about, could go even further. So
right, absolutely. Well, Terry, I'm so glad that Jeffrey Dahmer was not successful with the attempt of kidnapping you and being one of his victims. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before we go off the air?
No, I think we pretty much covered the story. I mean, we got it.
Awesome. Well, if you just want to stay on the line real quick, I really appreciate you joining me on the show.